During a shocking courtroom moment, an obese Karen boldly declares, "I don't recognize this court," directly to Judge Judy's face, thinking she could manipulate the system with her outrageous demands. But Judge Judy's response was so devastating and final that it silenced the entire courtroom and ended the trial immediately. What happened next will leave you speechless. The heavy courtroom doors swing open with a loud creak. She enters like she owns the place. Karen, weighing well over 300 pounds, waddles through the aisle with her chin held impossibly high. Her tight floral dress strains against her massive frame, and her bleached blonde hair is pulled into an aggressive ponytail that screams attitude. She clutches a crumpled fast food bag in one hand and a stack of papers in the other, rolling her eyes at every person she passes. The bailiff tries to direct her to the plaintiff's table, but she waves him off dismissively, muttering loud enough for everyone to hear. Judge Judy sits behind her bench, perfectly composed, but her sharp eyes track Karen's every move like a predator watching prey. The courtroom falls silent except for Karen's heavy breathing and the sound of her flip-flops slapping against the floor. Judge Judy's fingers drum once against her gavel, just once, the kind of warning that seasoned courtroom veterans recognize immediately, but Karen doesn't notice. She's too busy arranging her papers with exaggerated importance, completely unaware that she's about to walk into a verbal execution. Before we dive into this unbelievable courtroom showdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss what Judge Judy does to put this Karen in her place. Judge Judy opens the file with practiced precision. Her eyebrows raise slightly as she reads. Karen is suing her neighbor for $15,000 because his dog allegedly looked at her through the fence in a threatening manner. Not bit. Not barked. Looked. She claims the dog's stare gave her emotional trauma, caused her to gain 50 pounds from stress eating, and forced her to install blackout curtains throughout her house. Judge Judy's pen stops moving. She looks up slowly. Karen immediately launches into her sob story, waving her hands dramatically. She demands the neighbor pay for her therapy sessions, her increased grocery bills, and a vacation to Hawaii to recover from the psychological damage. Her voice rises with each ridiculous demand, spittle flying as she gestures wildly. The defendant, a quiet elderly man named Mr. Peterson, sits bewildered. His lawyer presents evidence of Karen's history. Security footage from 3 different stores showing Karen screaming at teenage cashiers over expired coupons. A police report where she called 911 because her pizza delivery was 5 minutes late. Testimony from her apartment complex manager revealing she's filed noise complaints against every single neighbor for breathing too loudly. Mr. Peterson's wife takes the stand, her voice shaking as she describes how Karen threw dog feces at their front door and screamed profanities at their grandchildren for playing hopscotch too close to her property line, but Karen isn't listening. She's too busy interrupting every witness, rolling her eyes so dramatically they might fall out and making exaggerated gasping sounds at their testimony. When Mrs. Peterson mentions the feces incident, Karen actually stands up and shouts, "That's not how it happened." Judge Judy's gavel hits the bench like a gunshot. Karen freezes for exactly 2 seconds, then continues her rant about how everyone is lying and conspiring against her. She points an accusing finger at the elderly couple, claiming they're part of a neighborhood conspiracy to drive her out because they're jealous of her success. Judge Judy's jaw tightens. Her fingers grip the gavel handle. She leans forward slightly, a move that makes seasoned court watchers hold their breath. But Karen is completely oblivious. She's now demanding Judge Judy recuse herself because clearly, everyone in this courtroom is biased against people of her size and intelligence. The tension in the room becomes suffocating. Even the court reporter stops typing to stare at Karen in disbelief. Karen crosses her massive arms and leans back in her chair with a smug expression that could curdle milk. She interrupts Judge Judy mid-sentence, raising her hand like she's stopping traffic. "Excuse me, Your Honor, but I don't think you understand how this works." The courtroom goes dead silent. Even the air conditioning seems to pause. Judge Judy's pen hovers motionless above her notepad. Karen continues, completely oblivious to the danger radiating from the bench. "I've done my research, and according to the Constitution, I have the right to a fair trial. This whole process is biased against me from the start." She pulls out her phone and starts reading from what appears to be a Google search. Article 7 of the Bill of Rights clearly states that no judge can rule against a plaintiff without considering their emotional, state and personal circumstances. Judge Judy's eyebrow arches so high it nearly disappears into her hairline. There is no Article 7 in the Bill of Rights. Karen waves her phone triumphantly, as if she's just delivered a devastating legal blow. She demands that Judge Judy acknowledge her superior knowledge of constitutional law and adjust the proceedings accordingly. From the gallery, 3 women who are clearly Karen's friends start nodding vigorously and whispering encouragement. One of them, equally large and sporting a Live, Laugh, Love t-shirt, actually applauds when Karen finishes her fake constitutional lecture. They're feeding her delusion, making her bolder with each ridiculous statement. Karen turns to her cheering section with a satisfied grin, then swivels back to face Judge Judy with renewed confidence. Furthermore, Karen announces, standing up without permission, I demand to see your credentials. How do I know you're even qualified to judge my case? She plants her hands on her hips and stares down Judge Judy, with the kind of entitled rage usually reserved for store managers who won't accept expired coupons. Judge Judy slowly removes her reading glasses and sets them down with deliberate precision. Her voice when it comes is deadly quiet. Sit down now. But Karen doesn't sit. Instead, she doubles down. I don't have to sit down until you prove to me that you have the authority to make me sit down. She's practically vibrating with self-righteous fury now. Her supporters in the gallery are murmuring agreement, one of them loudly whispering that Judge Judy is clearly intimidated by Karen's legal expertise. Karen's chest puffs out with pride. She thinks she's winning. She thinks she's outsmarted one of television's most feared judges. Judge Judy stands slowly, her full authority radiating across the courtroom like heat from a furnace. Her voice cuts through Karen's smugness like a blade through butter. Ma'am, in 35 years on this bench I have seen every type of fool imaginable. But you— She pauses, her eyes boring into Karen's soul. You are about to discover exactly what happens when stupidity meets experience. Karen's face turns bright red, her double chin quivering with rage. She slams her meaty fist on the table so hard that her stack of papers scatters across the floor. The sound echoes through the courtroom like a gunshot. You know what? She screams, her voice reaching a pitch that could shatter glass. I don't recognize this court. The words hang in the air like a toxic cloud. Every person in the courtroom freezes. The bailiff's hand instinctively moves toward his belt. The court reporter's fingers hover motionless above her keyboard. Karen isn't finished. She's just getting started. This is a kangaroo court run by an old woman who thinks she's God. She points an accusing finger directly at Judge Judy's face, her arm wobbling with the effort. I demand a real judge in a real courtroom with real authority, not this television circus designed to humiliate people like me. Her voice cracks with self-righteous fury as spittle flies from her mouth. She turns to address the gallery like she's giving a revolutionary speech. This court has no jurisdiction over me because I never consented to be here. I know my rights. Her supporters are no longer cheering. Even they look mortified by what's happening. Karen grabs her purse and takes a dramatic step toward the exit, her flip-flops slapping against the floor with each heavy footfall. I'm walking out of here, and there's nothing any of you can do to stop me. She waves her arms above her head like she's conducting an orchestra of chaos. This whole system is corrupt, and I refuse to participate in this farce any longer. The courtroom is paralyzed. Grown men are staring with their mouths hanging open. A woman in the back row has her hand pressed over her heart like she's having chest pains. The defendant looks like he's witnessing a natural disaster. Nobody moves. Nobody breathes. Karen stands there triumphantly, waiting for someone to chase after her and beg her to come back. But Judge Judy doesn't chase. She doesn't beg. She doesn't even blink. She sits perfectly still, her hands folded calmly on the bench, watching Karen's meltdown with the detached interest of a scientist observing a particularly fascinating specimen. The silence stretches on for what feels like an eternity. Karen's confident smirk begins to falter as she realizes no one is stopping her. No one is arguing with her. No one seems to care that she's leaving. Judge Judy finally speaks, her voice so quiet that everyone strains to hear. Are you finished? Judge Judy rises from her chair with the slow, deliberate movement of a predator that has been circling its prey for far too long. Her voice when it comes is calm, measured, and absolutely terrifying. Ma'am, you don't recognize this court. She pauses, letting the question hang in the air like a death sentence. Well, let me educate you about something you clearly never learned in whatever backwater swamp you crawled out of. This court has been recognized by the state of California, the federal government, and every legal authority in this nation for over 2 decades. Your recognition is not required, requested, or remotely relevant. Karen's mouth opens like a fish gasping for air, but Judge Judy isn't finished, not even close. You stand there, all 300 pounds of entitled ignorance, and declare that you don't recognize my authority? Judge Judy's voice rises slightly, still controlled but gaining power like a gathering storm. I have been a judge longer than you've been an adult. I have presided over more cases than you have brain cells. I have forgotten more about the law than you will ever know, assuming you ever learn anything at all. The courtroom is so quiet you could hear a pin drop in the next county. Karen tries to interrupt, raising her hand weakly, but Judge Judy's glare stops her cold. Did I give you permission to speak? No. You forfeited that right when you decided to turn my courtroom into your personal circus. Judge Judy steps around her bench, moving closer to Karen with each word. You want to cite the Constitution? Let me give you a real constitutional lesson. Article 3, Section 1 establishes the judicial power of the United States. The Judiciary Act of 1925 gives me the authority to maintain order in this courtroom, and Title 18, Section 401 of the United States Code makes contempt of court a federal offense punishable by fine and imprisonment. Karen's face has gone from red to pale green. She's starting to realize she's not in a McDonald's arguing with a teenage manager. She's in a real courtroom with a real judge who has real power. But I thought, she stammers, her voice barely a whisper now. Judge Judy cuts her off with surgical precision. You thought what? That because this is televised it's somehow not real? That because you've watched a few episodes of Law & Order? You understand the legal system? That your Google searches make you qualified to challenge 35 years of judicial experience? The gallery is riveted. Some people are leaning forward so far they're about to fall out of their seats. Mr. Peterson looks like he's watching the most satisfying moment of his entire life. His wife is actually smiling for the first time since this nightmare began. Karen tries to backtrack, her voice shaking with fear and desperation. Your Honor, I didn't mean to disrespect. I was just... But Judge Judy isn't having any of it. You were just what? Having a temper tantrum because you realized your ridiculous lawsuit was about to be thrown out? Trying to bully your way out of facing consequences for your actions? Let me tell you something about respect, ma'am. Respect is earned, not demanded, and you have earned nothing but contempt. Judge Judy returns to her bench, her movements sharp and purposeful. You came into my courtroom with a lawsuit so frivolous it would be laughable if it weren't so pathetic. You're suing a man because his dog looked at you, not bit you, not attacked you, looked at you. Judge Judy picks up Karen's paperwork and holds it like it's contaminated. You claim this look gave you emotional trauma? Let me tell you about real trauma. Real trauma is what Mr. and Mrs. Peterson have endured because of your harassment. Real trauma is having to live next to someone so unstable that they throw feces at your door because your grandchildren played hopscotch. Karen tries to protest, but Judge Judy's voice rises to a roar that shakes the walls. I'm talking! The silence that follows is deafening. Karen shrinks into herself like a deflating balloon. Judge Judy continues, her voice now deadly quiet again. You want to know what I think about your case? I think you're a bully who has terrorized this elderly couple for months. I think you filed this lawsuit hoping to intimidate them into moving away. I think you're so used to getting your way by screaming and threatening that you genuinely believed it would work in my courtroom. Karen's supporters in the gallery are no longer making eye contact with her. They're staring at their phones, at the floor, anywhere but at the destruction happening in front of them. One of them actually gets up and quietly leaves. Karen notices and her confidence crumbles further. Your Honor, please, I just wanted... She tries again, her voice now barely audible. You wanted what? Justice? You wouldn't recognize justice if it walked up and introduced itself. You wanted money. You wanted to punish people for having the audacity to exist near you. You wanted to use this court as your personal weapon of revenge. Judge Judy leans forward, her eyes boring into Karen's soul. Well, congratulations. You got my attention, and now you're going to get my ruling. Judge Judy picks up her gavel, the weight of it seeming to contain the power of the entire judicial system. Your case is dismissed. Not only dismissed, but dismissed with prejudice, meaning you can never file this ridiculous lawsuit again. Furthermore, I'm awarding Mr. and Mrs. Peterson $5,000 in court costs and attorney fees, to be paid by you within 30 days. Karen's jaw drops so far it nearly hits the floor. $5,000? But I don't have... She starts to protest. Judge Judy cuts her off one final time. You don't have $5,000? Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to abuse the legal system. Maybe you should have considered the consequences before you terrorized your neighbors. Maybe you should have kept your mouth shut instead of declaring that you don't recognize this court. The gavel comes down with a sound like thunder. Court dismissed. Bailiff, please escort Ms. Karen out of my courtroom and make sure she understands that if she ever files another frivolous lawsuit in this jurisdiction, I will personally ensure she faces the full penalties for vexatious litigation. Karen stands there for a moment, swaying slightly, looking like she's been hit by a truck. The bailiff approaches her gently but firmly, and she allows herself to be led toward the exit like a zombie. As she reaches the courtroom doors, she turns back one last time, perhaps hoping for some mercy, some sign that this is all a bad dream. But Judge Judy is already organizing papers for the next case, having dismissed Karen from her thoughts as completely as she dismissed the case. The door closes behind Karen with a soft click that sounds like the end of everything she thought she knew about how the world works. If you're loving Judge Judy's absolute destruction of this entitled Karen, smash that like button and let us know in the comments what your favorite Judge Judy moment is. But trust me, this isn't over yet. As the bailiff guides Karen toward the exit, her legs give out slightly and she stumbles, catching herself on the back of a courtroom pew. The sound echoes through the silent room like a final punctuation mark on her humiliation. Her face is streaked with tears and mascara, creating black rivers down her cheeks. She turns back one last time, her mouth opening as if to say something, but no words come out. Just a choked sob that makes even her former supporters look away in embarrassment. The woman in the Live, Laugh, Love shirt is frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to distance herself from the disaster she just witnessed. Outside the courtroom, Karen collapses onto a bench in the hallway, her massive frame shaking with the kind of sobs that come from complete and utter defeat. A court reporter walking by stops to stare, recognizing her as the woman who just got annihilated by Judge Judy. Karen notices the stare and tries to compose herself, wiping her face with the back of her hand and attempting to sit up straighter. But there's no dignity left to salvage. She looks like exactly what she is, a bully who finally met someone who couldn't be bullied. The video of her meltdown hits social media within hours. Someone in the gallery had been secretly recording on their phone, and the footage spreads like wildfire across Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. The hashtag $KarenVs Judge Judy becomes a trending topic within 6 hours. Millions of people watch Karen declare that she doesn't recognize the court, followed immediately by Judge Judy's devastating response. The comments are merciless. People are sharing it with captions like, "When entitlement meets reality," and "This is what happens when you mess with Judge Judy." Local news stations pick up the story, running segments about the woman who thought she could outsmart one of television's most feared judges. Back in her neighborhood, Karen's humiliation follows her home like a shadow. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson are suddenly the most popular people on the block as neighbors stop by to congratulate them and offer support. People who had been afraid to speak up about Karen's behavior for months are now coming forward with their own horror stories. The apartment manager receives a petition signed by 37 residents requesting Karen's immediate eviction. Her landlord, who had been dealing with complaints about her for years, finally has the ammunition he needs to begin the removal process. Karen's friends from the courtroom gallery stop returning her calls. The woman in the Live, Laugh, Love shirt posts on Facebook about how she barely knew Karen and was just being polite by attending the trial. The other supporters distance themselves so quickly you'd think Karen had a contagious disease. Her social media accounts are flooded with comments from strangers who watch the video. She tries to post her side of the story, claiming she was set up and that Judge Judy was biased, but nobody believes her. The evidence is right there on video for everyone to see. Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, Judge Judy addresses the remaining gallery members before calling the next case. Her voice is calm now, but carries the weight of decades of experience dealing with people like Karen. Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed is what happens when someone confuses loudness with strength, entitlement with rights, and bullying with justice. This courtroom has seen thousands of cases, but very few people have demonstrated such a complete lack of respect for the legal system and basic human decency. She pauses, looking directly into the cameras that broadcast her show to millions of viewers. Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks they can abuse the courts for personal vendettas, or believes that throwing a tantrum will get them what they want. The law doesn't care about your feelings. Justice doesn't bend to your convenience. And respect isn't something you can demand, it's something you earn through your actions and character. The case becomes legendary not just for Karen's spectacular meltdown, but for Judge Judy's masterful dismantling of entitlement culture. Legal scholars use it as an example of how judges can maintain authority, while educating the public about respect for institutions. Law schools show clips of Judge Judy's response to demonstrate effective courtroom management. The case is referenced in academic papers about vexatious litigation and the importance of judicial authority. 6 months later, Karen is still dealing with the consequences. She's been evicted from her apartment, lost her part-time job when her employer saw the viral video, and has become a cautionary tale in her community. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, meanwhile, are living peacefully for the first time in years. They've received the $5,000 Judge Judy awarded them, and their neighborhood has rallied around them with support and friendship. The dog that allegedly gave Karen trauma with his threatening stare is now the most beloved pet on the block, with neighbors bringing him treats and toys as a symbol of their victory over entitled behavior. Judge Judy's legacy isn't just about entertainment or television ratings. It's about something far more profound. The unwavering principle that actions have consequences, and that respect for institutions matters. In her 35 years on the bench, she has seen thousands of Karens walk through her courtroom doors, each one convinced that their outrage and entitlement would somehow bend reality to their will. But every single one of them learned the same harsh lesson that our Karen learned that day. This case became an internet sensation because it represents something millions of people desperately needed to see. Entitled behavior meeting its match. In a world where customer service workers are screamed at daily, where managers are threatened over expired coupons, and where basic human decency seems to be disappearing, Judge Judy's response was a collective catharsis. She said what every reasonable person wanted to say to every Karen they've ever encountered. The power of accountability isn't just about punishment. It's about restoration of order, respect, and basic human dignity. When Judge Judy demolished Karen's entitlement, she didn't just win a case. She reminded an entire nation that some things are sacred, that some lines cannot be crossed, and that justice still exists for those brave enough to demand it. If this epic courtroom showdown taught you something about accountability and respect, make sure to subscribe for more incredible Judge Judy moments that will restore your faith in justice. Drop a comment below telling us about a time you witnessed someone get exactly what they deserved. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs to see what happens when entitlement meets reality. Remember, respect isn't optional. It's earned and required. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next courtroom drama that proves justice always wins.